Have you ever looked up at the starry night sky and wondered, what ignited the cosmic flame that birthed the entire universe from nothingness? What if the wondrous complexity of life, from the swirling galaxies to the genetic code in each of your cells, is pointing to a master artist behind that grand canvas? And why does the sense of right and wrong burn so deeply in every human heart, as if etched by an invisible hand? These captivating mysteries are not just random thoughts. They weave together the threads of existence, design, and morality, inviting us to explore three profound reasons why believing in God becomes entirely reasonable. The question of God's existence is an issue humanity has wrestled with for centuries, sparking intense debates between those who believe in a higher power and skeptics or atheists. Non-believers often challenge Christian faithful. Give me concrete proof and I'll believe. Truth be told, no one can produce God like a magic trick or display him in a lab, but that doesn't mean faith is blind. Far from it. Even without physical evidence, there are compelling signs that propel us toward belief. In this video, we'll dive deep into those three reasons, not as weapons to win arguments, but as sparks to kindle thoughtful conversations. A quick note: approach this topic with humility. Debates can turn toxic when people focus solely on crushing the other side, ignoring genuine questions just to pounce on moments that make someone look foolish for lacking knowledge. I know some viewers will dive into the comments to debunk everything. That's totally fine. But if you're a Christian, remember that the three arguments about to be covered are meant to foster discussion and encourage others to consider that God might truly exist. So, when using them, stay humble. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching our video. Argument number 1. The creation argument. This is also known as the cosmological argument. And while I could break down each premise in detail, I think it's better to explain it in a way that's easy to use in everyday conversations. If that sounds a bit strange to you, don't worry, you just need to know that I'll simplify this argument because you don't really need to master all the premises unless you're in a formal debate. Essentially, the creation argument states that everything that begins to exist must have a reason for its existence. So, we as humans also need a reason for our being. Imagine it like this: everything we see has a cause. For example, looking at a towering building, we can be sure there were architects and builders who created it. Similarly, beautiful paintings come from artists, delicious meals from talented chefs, lush forests from tiny seeds, and majestic mountains from the shifting of Earth's tectonic plates. The core idea is that everything that exists requires a cause, and our universe is no exception. According to science, the universe is constantly expanding. If it's expanding non-stop, then rewinding time would reveal a definite starting point where everything began. So the big question is, how did it all start? And science still hasn't unlocked this mystery because we can't travel back in time to observe the actual beginning. Therefore, the creation argument concludes that since the universe exists with its galaxies, stars, planets, and Earth complete with oceans, land, and people, someone or something must be responsible for it. Some might argue, maybe the universe has always been here. I'd reply, the expansion of the universe is proof it's not infinite, as everything had to originate from a single point in history. Based on what we observe and know about the universe, this is the most logical conclusion. So, if the universe and everything in it needs a cause, then God or a higher power seems like the only sensible explanation. I know some will say, Christians just look at unknowns, shut off their brains, and attribute it all to God. At least scientists are observing and trying to figure it out. Back in college, I sat in on a friend's class where Professor J.P. Moreland taught something fascinating. The origin of the universe is beyond the scope of science. The reason? Science relies on the scientific method, meaning it depends solely on observing the world around us. Since time, space, and matter all started at a single point, no one can go back to observations, can't answer how the universe began. Professor Moreland asserted that this question belongs to philosophy, not science. I found that really thought-provoking. For me, if someone says, "You're just turning off your brain and crediting God," I'd respond, "I'm not turning off my brain. I just believe a higher power, transcending time, space, and matter, is the only one capable of creating the universe we see today. Do you have a better explanation for why everything exists? If so, I'd love to hear it, and I'm open to learning." If you're watching this and don't believe in God, I challenge you. Where do you think we all came from? Because I believe there must be an explanation for our existence. And God creating everything seems the most logical and reasonable choice. If you're a Christian wondering how to use this argument in conversation, simply ask people, where do you think we came from? How did the universe begin? It couldn't just pop into existence. Someone or something had to cause it. If they counter, how do we know for sure? Things might just appear naturally, and maybe the universe did too. I'd reply, in everyday life, we don't see things popping in and out of existence randomly. So, our universe must have a cause. And if they ask, then who created God? For an answer, you can watch the video titled, "Who Created God?" Argument number 2, the design argument. This is also known as the teleological argument. And just like I skipped the detailed premises in the creation argument, I'll do the same here. Because the goal of this video isn't to train professional debaters, but to help Christians grasp these arguments for smoother use in everyday talks. Basically, the design argument asserts that any complex and intelligent design must come from an intelligent mind or designer. Let's explore the astonishing complexity of humans themselves. I cover this in the video, "Is There Really a God?", where I describe how a single human body contains the cardiovascular, endocrine, digestive, respiratory, excretory, lymphatic, nervous, muscular, and skeletal systems all working in harmony like a perfect orchestra. Moreover, according to the National Institute of General Medical Sciences, the DNA in a single cell is about 1.8 meters long. If we stretched out all the DNA from every cell in the body, it would be a staggering 108 billion kilometers, long enough for 150,000 round trips to the moon. And that's just one person's DNA. The design argument suggests humans are far too complex to have formed solely through evolution, no matter how many billions of years pass. Imagine this. It would be absurd to think a modern laptop appeared in a deep forest just through natural evolution. Even if all the necessary components were scattered there and nature experimented for billions of years, you'd never get a working laptop. Yet many evolution supporters apply similar logic to human life. Basic building blocks gathered, gradually forming simple organisms that evolved non-stop into humans. I have to admit, I find evolution within the same species credible, like Darwin's finches, which adapt and change over time but remain birds. Or wolves breeding with domestic dogs to create countless dog breeds, but they stay dogs. However, evolution between species like fish turning into birds or birds into dogs is something I disagree with. The reason? In the fossil record, we rarely find true transitional species, those bridges midway through evolution. Back to the design argument. Complex and intelligent design requires an even more complex and intelligent designer. When admiring the intricacy of humans from cell structures to organ systems, you can't help but wonder, this miracle must come from a higher power. If you're a non-believer who finds evolution more logical, I challenge you to think of a moment when life emerged from non-living matter. In other words, if evolution started everything from inanimate things leading to humans, can you cite another example of life bursting from the lifeless? If not, where did life begin? You might say, I don't know, but I believe the most logical explanation is that life comes from a source of life, and I call that source God. If you're a Christian unsure how to use this argument in conversation, try asking lots of questions about their beliefs on life's complexity. You could say something like, humans are incredibly complex. Where do you think we came from? And how did life start? In my personal podcast, Practical Christianity, I interviewed a chemist friend and asked his view on evolution. He shared that, as a chemist, he carefully measures every chemical to create complex compounds. If his chemicals require human intelligence, then the world and humans with far greater complexity must surely be the work of a vastly superior intellect. And argument number 3, the moral argument. This argument basically asserts that the existence of universal moral laws that everyone follows is evidence of God, because He must have given us these laws. To clarify, consider acts like killing infants, deliberately polluting clean water sources, or rape all seen as obviously wrong. But the deeper question is, why do we think they're wrong? The moral argument suggests these moral laws can't arise from a purely biological world. They must come from a higher power, God. Why? If there were no God and we were purely biological creatures, humans would be no different from animals. Lions hunt gazelles, dogs can mate without consent, but we don't call it murder or rape because they're just acting on animal instincts. So, to truly reflect on this argument, we need to ask, why do humans view those acts as wrong? If the world were truly just biological, we couldn't condemn what Hitler did as wrong. According to the Holocaust Encyclopedia, Nazi Germany didn't just kill Jews, they also targeted black people, gay men, the disabled, and political opponents. Imagine, if morals didn't come from God, societal rules would be subjective, meaning what's wrong for me might be right for others and we could just respectfully disagree. But the moral argument emphasizes that there are things we can't respectfully disagree on, like Hitler's actions. They were absolutely wrong. Yet in a purely biological world, I'd argue we couldn't say he was wrong, because he was just doing what was right for him. Some might argue that objective morals can emerge from society, but if so, how do we know which morals to defend? Different values could conflict, so how do we know rape is wrong? And if it is, how do we ensure it stays wrong forever? I don't think the idea of morals developing from society answers this adequately. In summary, the moral argument concludes that because we have universal moral values like not murdering or raping recognized by all societies, it points to a higher being who inscribed them in our hearts. If you don't believe in God, I challenge you to think, where did your conscience, that sense of right and wrong, come from? Why are humans different from animals? Why can't we freely kill or have sex with anyone? I believe the most reasonable explanation is that God placed in each of us a conscience that recognizes and upholds universal moral laws. And if you're a Christian wanting to use this argument in conversation, try asking questions like, where do you think our sense of right and wrong comes from? Do you think what Hitler did was wrong, and why? Do you think it's possible we got our conscience from God? If not, why and how did you reach that conclusion? Okay, so if you're wondering whether God exists, I encourage you to consider these 3 arguments: the creation, design, and moral arguments. I need to note that these arguments don't prove the existence of the Christian God. I'll cover those specific ones in another video. But at least they're a great starting point for chatting about the possibility of God's existence. Most times when I talk about God with people, I find that the majority believe in some form of higher power. If so, I'll shift to arguments supporting Christianity, but if they don't believe, I'll use one or all 3 of these. Honestly, these arguments aren't meant to defeat anyone, but to spark discussions about what they believe. If this struck something deep within you, click like to spread light in a world wrapped in temptation. Share it with a brother who might be needing freedom from their own lust trap. Comment below. What part resonated most? What are you ready to change now? And don't forget to subscribe to receive more content to help you live pure, strong, and triumphant daily. A true man isn't one who resists lusts, one who starves it from the start. And you can do it starting today.